My son's dad is going through some financial issues at the moment and struggling to make ends meet, and I try to be understanding. I try my best to give my son nice things. Now his nice clothes are reserved for going out. If he wants to play, that's fine, but he can go and play clothes. I do not want him playing in those clothes, and I send him over there with a bag of causal clothes. We go to mass every Sunday and I have him dressed nicely. Now during mass I gave him to my ex because at that point it is now his week to stay with Alex. However, every single time, Alex will come back to me and his clothes will be wrecked, whether it's played in dirt, ripped. The buttons are off, the jeans are stained or ripped as well. I've thrown out multiple shoes because my ex will not have him change into the play clothes, that I send him in and just let him play in the nice clothes. I do not have him like this all the time. I don't have him dressy or in his nice clothes all the time, just when we're going to something important. Most of the time he's in stuff that he can play in, and comfortable clothes. It's not like I have him in that all the time to where I'm always stopping playtime to change. At this point I'm so over the nice clothes being ruined because he refuses to dress him and play clothes for whatever reason. So before mass ends I will have my son take off the nice clothes and dress in casual clothes. I've been doing this for about 2 months now, and it has helped my bank account a lot to not have to spend a fortune whenever they get wrecked. I'll also point out that I tell him this multiple times, every single time he brings him back with nice clothes being ruined. I will send him a message reminding him to please put him in play clothes before he plays in the mud or the park, etc. However, lately my ex has been very upset that I'm not sending him in nice clothes. I told him that I used to, but he kept on ruining them for whatever reason, and I don't want them ruined. He's saying that I'm flaunting in his face that he's broke right now and can't afford to buy him such nice clothes. That is not at all the case. I said that that is his own insecurity talking because I have never ever done that, and I'm giving him multiple chances. I'd even be fine if he at least washed them to the point where they weren't unwashable and stained. However, he keeps saying that I am rubbing in his face that he can't buy him nice clothes right now. He needs those clothes whenever they go out to somewhere nice, and I'm being an asshole to him because he lets his kid play, and I don't want him to enjoy his time with his son and they're just clothes. I said if it has such a little significance to him then he doesn't need them that bad, and there is no argument here. He's pissed at me. I told her to a couple of my friends and family and they agree that I'm the insensitive to his situation. My girlfriend and I have been dating the past 5 years, since college. After graduation, we were semi-long distance, living close enough that we alternately visited almost every weekend. In 2018, and got a job in my city, and we found a place and moved in together. Now's a good time to mention the security cameras in our house. Break-ins are unfortunately common where we live. We thus got some motion-activated cameras, one of which has a view of our kitchen, to monitor the back door. The cameras only record when there's motion so they can retain footage for a very long time. And of course knows this about a year ago, and started complaining I wasn't contributing equally to chores. I've been obsessive about chores my whole life. Growing up, not doing the dishes meant no video games for a week. When I lived with roommates, I was always the chore Nazi, making damn sure we all stuck to our chore wheel. And is just as fastidious about chores, so we just naturally alternated who did what. I'd just been brushing her remarks off, but over the last few months they've become much more aggressive. E.g. I was vacuuming and said, "Look at you finally cleaning up around here." I replied that we alternated vacuuming, to which she retorted, "No, you've vacuumed maybe twice since I moved in." Exchanges like this have been happening so frequently that I began to doubt my own recollection. Am I not as clean as I thought? Finally, she exploded at me last week. She said that having to stay home constantly over the past weeks exposed how little I do around the house, and that she didn't move in just to be my maid. Questioning my own sanity, I spent a few hours going through the entire 1.5-year archive of security camera footage, and tallied the exact number of times the kitchen cam caught each of us doing dishes. Our cleaning supplies, vacuum, mop, etc., are in the kitchen pantry, so I also tallied up how many times we grabbed cleaning stuff. To my vindication, the tally showed that we indeed split chores equally. She vacuumed / mopped 5 more times than I did. I did dishes 20 more times than she did. Given that we vacuum / mop at least once a week and do dishes at least every day, these are insignificant differences over the year and a half we've lived together. When I confronted Anne, she shrugged off her behavior as remembering things differently, but the real sin here was what I did, which she called an unforgivable violation of her privacy, akin to abusive stalking. She has broken up with me and is trying to move out, although obviously this is difficult due to current circumstances. I'm totally heartbroken, and was the love of my life, and I can't believe she destroyed our relationship like this. To make matters worse, she told many of our friends, who are mostly siding with her. They've been texting me that what I did was creepy, abusive, controlling, invasive, etc. I'm at a loss. I'm beginning to think I'm the one who's off base here. Since my wife and I got married 3 years ago, things have been off. I know that people grow and change with time, but around our wedding, my wife changed drastically. She bleached her dark brown hair blonde right before the ceremony. And I honestly thought I was in the wrong church for a split second when she came down the aisle. We moved into our house right after the honeymoon, and she went into full domestic mode. We'd shared cleaning duties before, but once we moved into the house, she became insistent on doing everything before I could even get to it. Since this is our first house, I thought it was some kind of homeowner nesting thing, but it never stopped. Her hair color is none of my business, and I think most people would be happy not to have to clean. So I honestly didn't really think much of either of those things at the time. The big thing has always been how closed off she got after the wedding. When we were dating, she'd tell me long rambling stories about her feelings and rant to me when she was upset and all that. And I liked hearing about what was going on inside her head. After the wedding, that stopped pretty abruptly. If I ask her how her day is, she will only ever tell me that it was fine or super. She doesn't talk to me about her feelings anymore, ever, even when I explicitly ask, "How do you feel about X?" She also stopped telling me about anything important that happened to her. About a year after we got married, her grandfather died. Did she tell me she'd lost her grandfather? No. She told me that she had to go to a conference for work on the other side of the country, which I thought nothing of. On the second day she was gone. Her older brother texted me to tell me that my in-laws had really missed seeing me at the funeral. When I called her to ask why in the ever-loving hell she didn't tell me, and then lied about it, all she would say was, "I didn't want to trouble you. You have a lot on your plate." After that, she went on a couple of spontaneous family trips. She's really close to her family, so the first time she said she was going camping with her brother at their alma mater. I didn't think a lot of it other than to be slightly disappointed and confused that I wasn't invited, because her brother's cool and the three of us go camping together a lot. But the second time, I started hearing alarm bells. I'd like to say I'm a more secure man, but after the second spontaneous family trip, my wheels started spinning and I started to think that maybe she was cheating. This was a weird insecurity in the back of my mind for a while, since she wasn't showing any other big signs of cheating. She wasn't guarded about her phone and hadn't changed her routine / appearance. A few weeks ago, she told me she was pregnant. I was over the moon about it until I asked her how many weeks along she was, and she nonchalantly said about 12 or 13. She'd been pregnant for like 3 months before she even bothered to tell me. She's not really showing at all, and she doesn't usually drink, so I had been completely in the bloody dark. I honestly hadn't even suspected. That was kind of it for me. I was sure she was cheating, and that it wasn't my kid. I thought there was no possible way that a woman would keep her pregnancy a secret from her husband for 3 months. So I snooped. Yes, I know I was wrong, but I wanted proof that she'd been having an affair before I moved out. One of my best buddies from college is a divorce attorney, and when I asked him what I should do, he sent me the info for a key logger. I installed it on my wife's laptop and was prepared for the worst. Now, I feel like what I found is somehow worse than her cheating. I didn't find any steamy messages, but I found out that she keeps a diary in a Word document that she writes in every day. I know I should have just stopped once I knew she wasn't cheating, but once I saw my name in her diary, I couldn't stop. I read all of it. All 7 separate documents, going back to way before we'd even met. Turns out she's not cheating. She's depressed, hates herself, and has absolutely no trust in me. All of the stuff I've been confused and bothered by has some kind of sad, self-loathing explanation. She hates having blonde hair, but she writes, "I know he'd divorce me if I went back to being a brunette." Because wives are supposed to be blonde almost every week. The wives are supposed to be thing is tangled up in everything. She thinks wives are supposed to be quiet, which is why she doesn't talk to me anymore. She thinks wives are supposed to make things easier for their husbands, not harder. Which is why she didn't tell me when her grandfather died. It just goes on and on and on. She didn't tell me when she got a huge promotion and a raise because he'd leave me in a heartbeat if he knew I made more money than he does. Men can't handle that. It hurt to know that she thinks of me as some kind of one-dimensional 1950s husband. And I've been racking my brain to think of anything I could have done to make her think this way. What I can't handle is that she'd lied about the big stuff. I honestly don't know if I can forgive her for not telling me about the miscarriages. The spontaneous family trips were actually her miscarrying 2 of our children, one at 5 weeks, the other at about 10. She went and stayed with her parents while she was recuperating, and her brother and sister came to support her. But not me. I didn't get to be there for her, because she thinks I would leave her immediately if I knew that she'd killed our children. She's convinced that she caused both miscarriages because she smoked pot for a long time before we got married. For what it's worth, it sounds like her family tried both times to get her to tell me, but she wouldn't. She finally told me about this pregnancy because her parents threatened to tell me she didn't. I'm just absolutely confused. I don't even know what to think right now. I'm just so baffled because everything she says about me in her diary is insanely nice. She goes on for pages and pages about how much she loves me and how she thinks I'm her soulmate and how she would do anything for me. I just can't understand why she thinks that I would leave her. Knowing that she's spent the last 3 years walking on eggshells around me, convinced that I would leave her at the drop of a hat is just so confusing and awful. I feel like our marriage is some kind of lie. The woman I thought was self-confident and ready to take on the world is actually full of self-loathing and really, really depressed. I don't know her at all. She's been suffering silently with depression long before we met. She has no faith in me, no trust. She thinks that every hug and kiss I give her and every "I love you" I say is a lie. I just don't know what to do. She obviously needs serious help, but I don't know how to get it for her. I can't tell her that I read her diary. If she has zero trust in me now, I can't even imagine what she'd think if she knew if I read 6 years worth of her private thoughts. I feel like I need to get my in-laws on board somehow, but I don't know what to say to them. I know I can't ignore this, but I feel like any move is the wrong move. My dad died and I'm scared my family won't get along. So yesterday after my dad comes home he eats what my mom made for him. Eggs and Spam. To be clear, he has a pre-existing medical history of high blood pressure and gout. First found out when he was admitted to the hospital in 2015 when he fell ill, and we basically had to force him to go to the hospital BC he didn't want to go. He was put on medication since, with changes to them maybe a year or so ago. So back to when after he ate. My half-sister heard a thud around 740-ish and told me to check BC. She thought maybe my parents are arguing. I go down and see my dad on the kitchen floor, my mom behind him a few feet away, and I hear him snoring. I ask my mom a question, get worried, run back upstairs and knock on my sister's door. She calls my other sister and also tells me to stop wasting time, call 911. I was scared and frantic. I wish I called 911 or saw him when he came in so I could maybe have called sooner. They get frantic too and we all start yelling at each other, and I try to maintain order also as I'm talking to 911 person. At some point in all of this my brother-in-law yells for help and I help him turn my dad onto his side. BC, he said he could choke on his saliva. My dad stops snoring and we start panicking. The EMS tells us how to perform CPR, but my sisters keep yelling, and so I try to get them working together. They finally start working on it. One is doing compression and the other giving him air and sometimes rotating. Fire department and ambulance gets here and they start doing the same thing but also have defibrillators, and honestly, I'm just in shock still. It was maybe 8:03 p.m. when they came or so, I don't remember, it's all a blur. I checked my phone for timestamp, but I called twice so I forgot when original call was placed. They called it at 8:50 p.m. and I just began to lose it. My aunt comes and my sister is trying to call my dad's work to let his bosses know. We talk about how we want my dad's arrangements and agree on cremation. BC, we don't have the money for anything else, but also my sister wants the remains. My mom is bipolar schizophrenic and my sisters and bro-in-law don't get along her because of a whole history that would keep you here forever if I tried to type it. My dad was a bad person but he still chose us and tried his best to provide regardless of his fallacies. He had my mom's back too, saying he wouldn't kick her out or place her in a mental home. My sisters kinda want that, I think, but I'm scared to talk about it. My mom is okay sometimes but also acts up BC of her mental illness sometimes, and my dad and I were her constants regardless of what happened. My mom is old and still wants to benefit from some social security services that my dad had, but my sisters and I think we should get a majority control of his account. There's a lot of renovations to be done. BC he ignored upkeep of the house for a number of years, example, the roof. My mom is not very sad about the ordeal. BC she had a long history of mental abuse from my dad and I understand, but we for some reason stayed together. How to move forward except for one moment at a time, and I'm still waiting for funeral home to come pick up his body. It's 8:13 a.m. now, been waiting since night before. And I have been crying but also I can't sleep, and I'm sorry if this doesn't meet guidelines. I just need to vent even though I told a few friends. I'm still in disbelief. How this will moving forward. I believe it can though. But it's hard to stay positive.